Okay, so my name is Kobe Dixon. So I chose freedom of speech, expression, and religion for my Module 3 assignment here. I want to apologize in advance. I do have my pup sitting here. She's chewing on a little rawhide thing. Keep her busy, keep her quiet. I would normally not let her be in the room, but I had to lock ourselves in here just because I don't trust her. She's torn up a couple too many things today. So I apologize for the noise. Hopefully she won't be too loud. She should be pretty quiet, other than you'll hear a little bit of knocking with the thing she's got in her mouth on the floor. So sorry if she disrupts anything. So anyways, so freedom of speech and expression and religion. This is something that I feel like is a very, hot topic, I would say, in today's society. Um, the first example that comes to mind is in regard to no matter your political view or not. A lot of students, at least in my school, it seemed like they wanted to say the "Let's go Brandon" statement. Um, it's a very hard whenever students want to say things like that, not getting into the depths of it or anything. Um, but it's got a deeper meaning a little bit, so that's where it becomes kind of a problem, and it's a political thing in general. I don't think that belongs in a seventh grade classroom or middle school at all. So I completely don't let anyone say anything in regard to any politics. As soon as we start talking about a politician at all, we change the subject typically. In my classroom, at least, I try to, just because I don't think that they need to talk about it, and I don't think they're educated enough on it. And frankly, I'm not educated well enough on it to teach it. That's why I teach computer apps, not history or any other government type class. So that's just another example. That's not what we're going to talk about today in my presentation, but that's a good example, I think, of students claiming freedom of speech very often, whether they understand what freedom of speech actually is, or if they understand what, they have the right to say and express kind of what they want, but it's still within some sort of guidelines. So you have to make sure that obviously you're not disrupting the education of others. That's the big one, or causing harm. So those are the two big things when it comes to freedom of speech or expression. You can kind of say and do what you want as long as you're not disrupting others or harming others in some form. So I want to get into a little bit more of this. I have a good example that I found. So my real life scenario example is the Giles versus, I'm not sure how to say this, Marinea. It's a student versus a school. So Giles is a student. It was at Williamston Middle High School in Vermont. And the student Giles, the plaintiff, wore a political agenda T-shirt. It's got a political message on it. I'll kind of go more in depth a little bit, but it's very obvious of what they're trying to say on the shirt. I did not pull up an example. I didn't think it was necessarily appropriate. I'm not sure if I should have or not, but ironically, the student was not. The student wore the shirt multiple times before it became a problem. I believe students reported that one student, Giles, and then a parent complaint came in, and then that's when there was more the school staff got involved with it. So it wasn't a teacher directly, like being the first person to say something and try to do something about it to violate their rights or anything. But there was other complaints, so then the school got involved with that. So the shirt that the student wore, that Giles wore, was mocking George W. Bush. It had George W. Bush's head on a chicken body, so it was all Photoshop. And then there was a helmet on the chicken, I think, and then there was some examples of substance abuse of using drugs or alcohol. They're both on there. So whether the shirt is a good political message or not, in your opinion, my first thought comes that's odd that shirt is being worn in a K through 12 education building of any sort, public education building. So I just think that that's odd, but we're going to move on from that. Um, and then the mockery of George W. Bush also came with some of the phrases that were on the shirt as well that were kind of jabs at his terrible leadership, quote unquote, that the student felt. So, like I said, after a student and a parent complained, that's when the school staff got involved. A staff member actually just addressed the student and asked the student to cover up the inappropriate wording or pictures, and then or you can turn the shirt inside out, or you can change shirts. So they gave him 3 options. They were really nice about it. The student chose to change shirts. The student chose to do neither, and that's when a parent was called, and the student decided to go home for the day. So, if, from what I understand, the school kind of gave them a couple options, and they were not very firm on them or anything. I mean, like they didn't really like push for you need to just cover it up, or you need to just change shirts, or turn the shirts. Like they kind of gave them the option. You can do what you want, but they just didn't feel it was appropriate more than anything. I feel like. So then the superintendent got involved and had a conversation with the parent, or one of the parents of the student, and that became a thing. And then the student ended up suing the school district, or the parents of the students ended up suing the school district. And they sued because they felt like they deserved to get the disciplinary referral that came from the superintendent conversation with the parent. So let me backtrack. Sorry. So after the superintendent and the parent talked, the superintendent went ahead and filed a disciplinary referral for the student. So it's on his permanent record. So that's when the student and the parents decided to sue. They wanted that taken off the record, and they argued that wearing the shirt was just a freedom of speech, part of their rights, part of the First Amendment, being able to speak and express what they kind of feel. So that's what they kind of were banking it on. So they wanted to make sure that was taken off the record, and they wanted to make sure that they were allowed to wear what they wanted and say what they wanted, because they felt like they didn't do anything wrong. So my question for this is, should students be allowed to wear political agenda influenced clothing while displaying pictures and words describing substance abuse and or use? Honestly, with this question, you can honestly probably take part of the question off, about the political agenda influence part of it. I don't know if that's necessarily as important. I'm not here to question whether a student can wear a political shirt or not, or a political agenda shirt or not. My biggest thing that I wanted to know, or kind of search into this, is should students be allowed to wear clothing in general that displays pictures and words describing substance abuse and or use. So just kind of want to see kind of what your guys' thoughts were on that, as well as digging in a little bit with this case. So the 2 different sides of it, the student side one, they claimed freedom of speech and expression. Student felt that they were being wronged of their right to the freedom of speech and expression. For lack of better words, I'm going to read most of this, just so that you kind of get the gist of kind of what I want to put out there. So the student is upset with being asked to cover up the detail of the said shirt, because it wouldn't have the full impact of the message he's trying to convey. Then the student did not comply with the school staff members and was written a disciplinary referral and sent home, because, and I kind of worded that poorly. From what I remember on the report or on the case study, it was that the student chose to not do any of the options and asked to go home. So then the school sent them home. And that's when the phone call came from the parents. And then the student then eventually complied with the mockery, showing back up the next day, I believe, wearing the same shirt again, but duct tape, or put tape in general, over the parts that the school asked the student to, but then put on there censored, trying to say, hey, like they're telling me I can't speak and express what I want with this political message, kind of getting at it. And then that's when the lawsuit came. So then side number 2 is the school, and they felt that their argument was that there's inappropriate pictures of substance abuse and use. um, which are neither allowed in school. You can't have drugs or alcohol in school, and both are on the shirt. Why would you wear something that you're not about something that you're not allowed to have? Even that'd be like wearing a shirt with a gun on it. Probably not okay. Probably not going to happen. Probably going to get in trouble for that one too. I feel like. So that's kind of the argument. Is just the student was wearing something that was blatantly against the rules as far as what can and can't come into the school. So why would they allow for a picture of it on a shirt to be worn? But the student and parent complaints brought attention to the inappropriate shirt. And according to the handbook, any clothing that displays drugs, alcohol, violence, and or racism is prohibited. A school staff member gave the student a few options to resolve the conflict. And I felt and they felt they were all pretty reasonable options. They didn't demand that the student do anything. They gave them the option to go home. So they kind of were being as what's the right word? I can't think of it. They were accommodating. There you go. They were accommodating as much as possible for the situation. I don't think they were necessarily mad or anything with the student. They were just trying to solve the problem of having the inappropriate pictures on the shirt. So then the superintendent had the conversation with the student's father to try and reason about the situation at hand. And that's when things escalated and there became a lawsuit. I really think just in general, this whole case is kind of absurd. I get where the student is coming from, if they couldn't express themselves. But as a teacher, I don't know if I would, if it was a shirt that did not have a political message behind it and it was just the drugs and alcohol, the student wouldn't be allowed to wear it. So it's kind of wishy-washy when it comes to making it a political thing. Obviously, it's one of the presidents, so it's going to be political, and they were insulting their leadership and stuff like that. So it's just very, very gray area. You know, if you've heard that term, it's you got black and you got white, and there's that gray area that's just very, very hard to kind of figure out. You know what way to lean or what way to go. So I think the student should get in trouble, but also I could see why the student would get in trouble behind the legal side of it with your rights. So I understand, but it's kind of, like I said, in the gray area, it's kind of wishy-washy a little bit. So a very strange case, something I've never really heard of actually. And I'd be interested to see if this happens actually more often. Some of the things that I kind of learned from this was that the student was protected under the First and 14th Amendments. They was considered protected speech or expression under the First and 14th Amendment. The school staff violated the students' rights. That's kind of what the court came to conclusion of. They felt like the vulgar images were technically still a part of the message or the ideas that the student was trying to express, and it would kind of take away from the student's message if you didn't have those on there. All in all, the school was at fault and the student was innocent. But both parties were in agreement that the Giles t-shirt did not disrupt the educational environment. And that's why ultimately that a student can get away with wearing a t-shirt like this is because it's obviously freedom of speech and expression, but because they didn't disrupt the educational process and they didn't harm anyone else with wearing the shirt, then at that point, then it's kind of like the school district's hands are tied. They can't really do anything else. The court's hands are tied. They can't really do anything else. They really feel like, the student didn't do anything to cause problems. The student didn't harm anyone. They just wore a shirt. It does have inappropriate things on it, but it's part of the message, so they're going to just let it go. It's kind of what I kind of understood. Some of the things that I kind of question from this case would be, how does one get away with just wearing a shirt that displays drugs and alcohol in a public school setting, no matter if it's a political agenda message behind it or not? That's one of the biggest things. If it didn't have George Washington's face on it and didn't talk about his presidency term, then it would technically be a prohibited shirt. Like the student would be allowed to wear it. They would have been asked, been changed, and that would have been no questions asked. There'd be no lawsuit, anything. So it's just kind of weird to me that, or strange to me that the student kind of still gets away with it. But also another question that I have is what message does this send to students in regard to what is appropriate to wear? I really wonder how the student body responded after this lawsuit kind of played out. Wonder if there was an increase in dress code violations with vulgar images or phrases on them, or inappropriate images or phrases on them, just to see. So it's something else I want to kind of look into or maybe get answered later down the road. But those are the two kind of things that just kind of are pondering in my mind a little bit as I finish and wrap up this case study and read into it a little bit. So it's a very interesting case study. I think that, and then there's my references. I think that it's a very strange, like I said earlier, like a wishy-washy or like a gray area type situation. It's very, very strange that a student can wear that kind of a shirt and still get away with it. But if you take the president's face off of it and just put a random person on there, then it would technically be inappropriate, from my understanding. Maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to the amendments and kind of human rights as a whole. I know a little bit, but not a whole lot, enough to be able to talk in detail about it. So this was a learning experience for me. I really did like this. It kind of helped open up my eyes a little bit to more of what freedom of speech and expression and religion is. So look forward to hearing from you guys on your thoughts on this case study. Thank you so much.